The bride screamed, a sound so piercing the cows in the far pasture actually stopped chewing, their placid faces momentarily startled. Her ridiculously expensive veil, a cloud of imported lace, dangled precariously from my goat Petunia's horns. Her meticulously crafted wedding arch lay crushed beneath the tires of my vintage John Deere tractor, and Sinatra, my prize-winning rooster, perched on the crimson carpet, had just, well, let's say he'd added his own rustic touch to the groom's rented tuxedo. But none of that was the plan. Not at first. It all began 7 hours earlier, 6 a.m. sharp, when I stepped onto my porch, coffee mug warming my 71-year-old hands, and found my long gravel driveway hijacked by someone else's dream wedding. I've run this dairy farm for 40 relentless years, weathered droughts, blizzards, and fluctuating milk prices, but watching a woman in a headset, let's call her Karen Prime, direct traffic over my property like she owned the county, that was a new breed of audacious. She had an assistant with a clipboard ticking off unseen tasks, a DJ already testing speakers that vibrated the dew off my prize-winning zinnias, and someone unrolling yards of red velvet straight across the path, where my feed truck was due in under an hour. My old border collie, Buck, managed a bewildered woof before seemingly deciding the situation was beyond even his herding capabilities. My name is Ruth, and cows, bless their simple hearts, don't wait on ceremony. When my gate is blocked, this entire operation grinds to a halt. Milk production, deliveries, pickups, the vital hay run, all of it. I ambled towards the unfolding chaos, a small, persistent hope flickering that this was all a terrible, easily rectified mistake. No such luck. A young man in impossibly tight black slacks waved me off with the dismissive grace of someone who'd never encountered mud. "Excuse me," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Are you with the county?" He chuckled, a sound like dry leaves skittering. "Hardly. She's the bride." He gestured to a woman snapping selfies by my weathered fence, her laughter echoing a little too loudly. "We're using the backdrop. Very rustic, trace shabby chic, you know?" The woman, a confection of white satin and nervous energy, twirled in her stilettos, which were already sinking into the gravel. "Don't mind us," she chirped, waving at me as if I were a quaint garden gnome. "Ceremonies in 2 hours. You can just walk around the barn if you need to leave." I stared. My driveway wasn't a scenic detour. It was the farm's artery, the only vehicle access. The creek hemmed in one side, and the rear pasture was too soft for heavy trucks this time of year. "This is private land," I stated, keeping my tone even. "You've blocked my entire entrance." She blinked, her perfectly painted lashes fluttering, as if I'd just asked her to milk a particularly surly bull. "We're just renting this space for a few hours," she said, voice dripping with condescension. The event planner said the driveway was part of the scenic view. "Scenic view," I repeated, the words tasting like ash. "That view feeds 30 dairy cows, ma'am." Her laugh, louder this time, grated. "Oh, let's add some hay bales over there," she trilled to a flustered florist. "Leaning fences are so in this season." I wanted to shout, to unleash a tirade honed by decades of dealing with obstinate livestock and city folk who thought milk originated in cartons. But I've lived too long to waste breath on noise. Instead, I asked to speak to whoever signed the rental agreement. She gestured vaguely toward a man in a too shiny blazer, hovering near a catering truck. "That's smart, my cousin. He knows the mayor. This wedding is going to be in the Gazette. You're blocking an active farm," I repeated slower, enunciating each word. "My feed truck can't even turn in." "Then park somewhere else," she snapped, her voice flipping from saccharine to shrill. "It's not my fault your farm is in the way of something beautiful." That was the moment. Her words, laced with such casual disdain, settled like dust on a dry barn floor. I looked at her silk dress, already acquiring a fine layer of farm grit, the precarious heels, the way she flitted between arriving guests like minor royalty at a barn-themed ball. Then I looked at my mud-splattered boots, the rising sun painting the pasture gold, the feed truck already, with a mournful beep, backing down the county road. And I smiled. Not the kind of smile you give a friend, the kind that blooms from knowing, with absolute certainty, exactly what you're going to do next. I walked back to the porch and whistled, low and sharp. My nephew Kyle, bless his inventive soul, popped his head out from the shed, a bucket of oats in hand. Aunt Ruth? Is it just me? Or are those folks setting up a 5-star wedding on our driveway? Not just you, son, I replied, the smile still playing on my lips. They've claimed it as their aisle. Kyle blinked, his young face a mask of disbelief. Do they know this place isn't a petting zoo? They will, I said, my voice mild. They will by noon. I explained everything. His eyes lit up like a kid handed a box of fireworks. We weren't truly angry. Offended by the sheer, unadulterated entitlement, absolutely. But beneath that, a spark of mischief, a farmer's pragmatic approach to problem-solving, was igniting. Most folks around here knew better than to mess with a farm family whose livelihood depended on clear access. But this bride, let's call her Karen too, the bridal edition, wore her entitlement like expensive perfume, expecting everyone to inhale deeply and compliment the aroma. She saw my land as a photo op, my cows as props, and me as a background extra in her happily ever after. That was her first, and as it turned out, most spectacular mistake. By 9 a.m., Kyle was on the phone with Town Hall, his voice a charming mix of politeness and urgency. There's an obscure, blessedly vague ordinance about public awareness livestock processions, designed mostly for 4-H clubs or Veterans Day parades, but livestock technically qualified. We're in, he crowed, phone clapped to his ear. Sheriff Dobbs says it's perfectly legal, provided we have cones, a designated parade marshal, and a signed permit. And quote, don't bring the bull, Ruth. He's looking feisty this week. Good, I said, pouring him a coffee. The bull's in heat anyway. He'd steal the spotlight. We both chuckled, a sound that echoed with shared anticipation. Meanwhile, the wedding crew, oblivious, kept erecting their shrine to matrimonial bliss. Guests in shiny cars and pastel armor began arriving. They sipped lemonade from mason jars, posed in front of antique wagons Karen too had rented, probably for a fortune, and made small talk about the charming authenticity of the countryside. None of them noticed the far barn doors creaking open. None of them saw Kyle, with a conspiratorial grin, attaching festive bells to the collars of our most photogenic goats. None of them saw me, with a steady hand, preparing the old tractor with a freshly hand-painted sign. Annual Livestock Awareness Parade, noon sharp. At 11:45, I changed, not into anything fancy, just a clean denim jacket and my wide-brimmed straw hat. I fed the parade participants extra grain, a little incentive for their upcoming performance. Sinatra, the rooster, puffed his chest with an air of importance. Kyle loaded speakers into the back of the pickup, queuing up a playlist titled Farm Bangers Volume 1. We gave every critter a small, brightly colored flag to hold, or, in the case of the chickens, to have loosely tied to their coop on wheels. Petunia, the aforementioned goat, even sported a jaunty bow tie. If we were going to crash a wedding, we were going to do it with style. At 11:58, I walked to the front gate, the tractor key warm in my pocket. The bride was mid-vow, her voice a tremulous whisper. Guests stood in respectful silence. A drone buzzed overhead, capturing the magic. A string quartet played something delicate and forgettable. And then, at exactly noon, Kyle, resplendent in a borrowed marching band shako, raised a comically oversized toy trumpet to his lips. The parade had begun. The trumpet's first note wasn't deafening, just insistent. Enough to slice through the violins and the hushed reverence. The bride paused, a frown marring her perfect brow. The preacher blinked. By the second, more confident note, followed by the unmistakable, mournful bray of Bartholomew, our most vocally gifted donkey, the atmosphere shifted from saccharine to surreal. From the barn emerged Kyle, leading Petunia and Percival, our two most personable goats, now wearing patriotic bandanas and pulling a small, decorated cart filled with surprisingly calm chickens. Behind them, a line of our best dairy cows plodded placidly, their bells clanging a gentle bovine rhythm. Bartholomew, true to his stubborn nature, refused a straight path, veering into a table laden with wedding favors, sending a tower of beribboned gift bags cascading. Gasps rippled through the guests. Some giggled nervously. Others fumbled for their phones, a flicker of confusion. Was this an elaborate, rustic surprise? Karen, too, however, was not confused. She spun, white gown billowing, eyes locking onto me as I rumbled slowly up the driveway on the tractor, the parade sign prominent. I offered a small, neighborly wave. Her mouth opened, a perfect O of disbelief, but no sound emerged. The parade advanced with unhurried dignity. The goats bleated a cheerful counterpoint to the cows' rhythmic clanging. Sinatra, perched on the chicken cart like a feathered admiral, let loose a crow that drowned out the preacher's stammered attempts to regain control. That was when the wedding officially imploded. The groom tried to speak, but Petunia, perhaps mistaking his shiny shoes for a salt lick, trotted between him and the bride. A cow, deciding the floral arch looked like an excellent scratching post, leaned in, toppling it with a gentle sigh of splintering wood. Someone screamed. Through it all, Karen too stood frozen, veil askew, mouth agape. Then she moved. Wedding dress hiked, heels digging into gravel, she stormed towards me. "What is this?" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "What are you doing?" I cut the tractor's engine. "Livestock awareness parade," I said, my voice calm. "Happens every year. Good for tourism, you know." "A parade?" She snatched at the permit taped to the tractor. I held it firm. Just then, Sheriff Dobbs' cruiser crunched up the driveway, lights flashing softly. "Afternoon, folks," he drawled, tipping his hat. "Lovely day. What seems to be the trouble?" Karen too rushed to him. "She's ruining my wedding. This is harassment." Dobbs listened, then turned to me. "Permit, Ruth?" I handed it over. He read it, nodded. "Seems in order. Public access road. Permits valid. No laws broken here." He then fixed Karen too with a steady gaze. "Ma'am, this driveway isn't a public event space. Blocking it is the violation. Looks like the cows got here fair and square." Karen too made a strangled sound. Her groom was shaking Kyle's hand. The preacher was eating a cupcake. I restarted the tractor. Sinatra crowed. The parade continued its majestic, if slightly odorous, journey back to the barn, leaving behind a tableau of bewildered guests, overturned chairs, and the slowly deflating dreams of Karen too. The aftermath was noisy. "That went better than expected," Kyle grinned, hosing down the chicken cart. But Karen too returned, clipboard-wielding assistant in tow, demanding apologies and compensation for ruined dignity. "Did you have a permit to block my driveway?" I asked, still mucking out Petunia's stall. Silence. "Thought so. My hay delivery was missed. Vet couldn't get through. My prize heifer, Bess, is stressed and her milk's down. If we're trading invoices, mine's longer." "You'll regret this," she seethed. "I'll have you shut down." I simply retrieved her veil from Petunia's horns and handed it back. Later, Kyle showed me the video. Wedding crashed by goats and a tractor. Epic farm revenge. It had 70,000 views and climbing. Comments like "Ruth is my spirit animal" and "Justice served with hooves" flooded the feed. Sinatra crowing mid-vow became a meme. When your farm says no to nonsense. The local news truck arrived the next morning. I told the reporter, "I didn't ruin anything. I protected my land. If my animals walked through a party, maybe that party shouldn't have been on a working driveway. The HOA meeting Karen 2 called was a spectacular failure for her. My neighbors, bless them, spoke up. Ruth's animals are better behaved than most kids, one declared. Her proposed bans on livestock parades within 1 mile and rooster noise limits were unanimously rejected. She stormed out. Her next move was a do-over ceremony, rebranded as a luxury country elegance-styled photo shoot. Same driveway, more decorations and security. My response? Our farm's first Barnstorm Bash community fair. Free entry, petting zoo, tractor rides, cow milking contest. The town loved it. Karen 2's guests, drawn by the laughter and smell of popcorn, defected en masse to our side of the fence. Her photographer packed up early as toddlers gleefully chased chickens where models were supposed to pose. The security guard was last seen sharing cotton candy with Bartholomew. Her final, laminated community aesthetic mandate, taped to her mailbox, listing prohibitions against unsightly livestock and amateur signage, ended up in my recycling bin. Sheriff Dobbs dropped by a week later. Karen filed another complaint. Residential tranquility, violations from the fair. Tossed it already. He chuckled. You've got the town behind you, Ruth. Everyone loves a good underdog. And they did. The local paper nominated me for a community spotlight for cultural preservation and integrity under pressure. Kyle framed the letter. Karen became a whisper, a local anecdote. The battle wasn't loud anymore. It didn't need to be. Nothing drowns out a tantrum like a barn full of laughter and a town full of respect. The land had its say, the animals had their moment, and in the end, that was more than enough.